This is The Other 51. I'm Brian, and this week my guest is Joe Posnanski, author of the book Why We Love Baseball, A History in 50 Moments. Joe Posnanski, thanks for joining us again on The Other 51. It is always great to have you here.
Always great to be here.
And I want to start off, so we know we got a lot of baseball talk, we got a lot of book talk, got a lot of writing talk, but we have the most important question I think I want to ask, and we'll get it out of the way right at the start. What is your current Taylor Swift era?
Oh, good. You're right. This is obviously the most crucial question. So my current era is Red.
Ooh, all right.
Red is, I like that. I liked that when people came up to me, and by people I mean young girls and women, my daughter's age, came up to me to sort of ask the old guy what his favorite era was, and for me to say Red kind of gave them all just a little bit of joy, just a
That's a
little
pull.
joy.
Yeah.
One, that I had an answer, and two, that it wasn't like a sort of obvious answer. Like
Right.
it's a little bit old school, but not super old school. Yeah, I'm with Red right now.
That's a good pull, because like the easy one for the middle-aged dads like us is like Folklore, Evermore, and those are great, and they're
Right.
fantastic. But you saw her. I will be seeing her with my daughter in Toronto next year. We were able to snag tickets on that, so that's going to
The
be
best.
Is it good? Is it so worth?
It's not good. Good is not the description. I've talked with Mike Sure about this. There's nothing I've ever been at or he's ever been at where you go in with 70,000 people and every single one of them walks out saying this was the best day of their life.
That's awesome.
It's really amazing.
So looking forward to that. But we're looking forward to book talk. So you have the new book is out, Why We Love Baseball, A History in 50 Moments. Loved reading it. It's fabulous. Links to buy it in the show notes and everything. Wanted to start out, there's a great line you have in the introduction, and I promise I read the whole thing. I didn't just read the introduction for the podcast, but there's a great line right in the introduction is, "This is the book I always hoped would be on the shelf." And you're talking about like finding sports books when you were growing up in the library. And I'm curious to start our conversation here. Is that the idea that, like, did you have that when you started writing this book, and obviously the Baseball 100 on that, or did it kind of come to you afterwards that this was that?
I guess it's a little bit of both. This is and I you caught me in the middle of the crazy tour, so I'm getting a lot of questions and that are very similar, and so I'm sort of, I don't want to, but I'm coming up with sort of stock answers. And the problem with coming up with stock answers is that they were true when you first came up with the answer, and then or you start saying them, the less they start to mean. But this is really true. This is the first book that I wrote. So this is my seventh, and it's the first book I wrote where I had the title before I started the book. Like every other one of my books, I came up with the title later. Sometimes came up with multiple titles because the first title didn't quite work. But this one, I knew it was going to be called Why We Love Baseball before I even knew what the structure of the book was going to be or anything else. So in that way, yes, I definitely had in my mind, the quote you referred to is, there was a library right around the corner from our house. And when I was a little kid, I would go to the library all the time and just see if a new sports book was in. And very rarely was a new sports book in, but that thrill I would feel, and it didn't matter what sport it was. So I could be like, oh, there's a book about goaltender Bernie Parent. I would get super duper excited, Oh, there's a book about Ron Guidry, and I would get really excited. I would have lost my mind if a book called Why We Love Baseball just showed up on the shelf. So in that way, yes, it was there with me as I was starting the writing, as I went through the writing. But the way the book turned out, which was a lot of adjustments, a lot of tossing and turning on this one. The way it turned out, it just ended up becoming, in my mind, sort of the perfect book for me when I was 10 years old. I mean, like, the idea that I'd be able to pick up a book and read about the most magical moments in baseball history, one after another, after another, after another, I just would have lost my mind. I mean, that would have just been so in my wheelhouse as a kid. And I don't think I fully appreciated that until it was done. But that thought was in my mind even from the very beginning.
So you talked about the structure of the book, and it's structured. You have the 50 moments of, and they're not there. And I do love this. I do want to get to this. I do love that it's why we love baseball. And you go to a bookstore, and even like my own writing projects, you're like, you got to be definitive, like the 50 moments that like changed baseball history, or da 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 da, or something like that. And I love this, that it's just why we love baseball. Like, it's big, but it's very little too. I imagine that was on purpose.
It was. I've grown to be a very I've grown sick of the two different kinds. There's the last kind of book, right? The last hero, the last this, the last, the last Super Bowl, the last great team, there's none of them are right. There's no lasts, right? And then the other one is like the thing you say, where you just blow it completely out of proportion. Like when I came up with the title for the Baseball 100, like that could have been the greatest players, and I didn't want that. It was so important to me not to do that for many reasons, including the fact that I don't. It's just one guy's opinion, right? I mean, like all of these things are. Um, why we love baseball really stuck with me. Like it just like that was the whole thing with the book. And even before I knew it was going to be about moments, even before I knew what anything close to what the structure of it was going to be. And look, I just written the Baseball 100. It had done incredibly well, and there was obviously always going to be potentially a list quotient and some of the other things, but it was why we love baseball. I just thought that was so simple and so, to me, so powerful, because it's sort of like when I've talked to people and I've like said, "Oh yeah, what's your next book?" It's like why we love baseball. They don't ask what the book is about. They tell me why they love baseball. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's
Mm-hmm.
it's a conversation starter. So yeah, that really was important to me to just have it be sort of a just out there. And I think anybody who sees the title will have an opinion, like a thought that will come to mind about it.
One of my favorite moments in the book is in the Shoeless Joe chapter, about Shoeless Joe Jackson. And I love the idea that Connie Mack sent. I'm reading. He sent his injured star Sox Siebold to bring Jackson to Philadelphia. And I love that Shoeless Joe is tracked down by a dude named Sox.
It's perfect. It's
It,
absolutely perfect. But one thing that I kept seeing in the book, kept seeing in this is like, and I'm working now on a football book, and football is very, very, very different. But in baseball, there's like, I start off with a story that to me is sort of the essence of the book, and it to me gets close to sort of the poetry of baseball. And there's like a little mystical quality of baseball, and there are these coincidences that just are, you know, that only happen with baseball. And I think it's because it's a game played every day, and just mathematically stuff is going to happen that is incredibly weird and cool and different. And so yeah, I mean, having a guy named Socks find a guy named Shoeless is pretty good.
why were they so obsessed with footwear? You kind of asked that question, but it seems like they were like sports writers back then. They really cared about footwear.
Yeah, I one of the things that blows my mind is why everybody from very beginning called him Shoeless Joe. It's sort of like it's I mean, we seem to think he played one game without shoes. I mean, it doesn't feel like that should be a lifelong thing, and yet, there's something really magical about Shoeless Joe.
So you mentioned the structure of the book and kind of coming up with the idea around moments and that. What was that process like, coming from this idea of, the book wants to be why we love baseball? Kind of like, you write a lot about baseball in your great Substack. You talk a lot about baseball, but how did how did that idea kind of coalesce in your mind that it was going to be moments, and the way that the book turned out?
I asked a bunch of different people that question why they love baseball, and got crazy answers, very, very different than the answers you get when you ask people why they love football. Like you say why they love football, and it's, you know, it's the quarterback hits or great runs. You know what I mean? Like immediately just comes to mind very specific things. And in baseball, it's very vague. And it's, it's, oh, I've loved baseball since, my dad took me to my first game, or I've loved baseball since watching, listening in the backyard with my grandma to Jack Buck or whatever. And it's a very different kind of thing. And as I thought about it, why we love baseball, it comes down to moments. And there some of the moments are famous, and some of the moments in this book are famous. Some of the moments are completely unknown to everybody except the person. It could be a home run you hit in Little League or something. So it's like, but it's always about moments. And so I wanted to do moments, and then it's like, all right, I'm going to do a countdown of the 50 greatest moments. And then it was like, well, should it be a countdown of the 100 greatest moments, because I'm leaving out so many? And then it's like, well, is there a way to do a countdown of the 50 greatest moments but include a bunch of other moments that are not exactly? And it was just, I went through a lot of different versions of this book, more than any of the other books I've written. And I just kind of kept dancing around what I wanted, and finally sort of came up with the structure that is this book, which is, it is 50 moments, but as you well know, it's actually many, many more moments. I squeeze a lot of different moments into various sort of compilation chapters, and squeeze a lot of others sort of in places you wouldn't expect them. And it ends up being, I count 108 moments because I love the number 108. But it ends up being all of these different, not only moments, but different kinds of moments. So there's fictional moments in here, and there are moments that nobody knows, until you read the book. And then there's Willie Mays' catch and Kirk Gibson's homer and the shot heard around the world that everybody knows, where I try to tell it in a little bit different way. So it ends up being all of these different kinds of moments from all these different levels, from throughout the history of baseball, 150 years. And hopefully somewhere at the end, you're like, okay, well, that's a complete picture of why we love baseball.
I know 108, the very important number in baseball, the Cubs, the stitches on the baseball, all of
Right.
that. Did you stop at 108, or did you realize you had 108?
I think I only counted 108, and then
Okay.
like there are others like, you counting that? Like, nah, I don't think so. That's not exactly a moment, I don't exactly do that. So yeah, it's probably like somebody's going to come up and like, it's 111, which it might well be, but yeah, I sort of stopped at 108.
So you've been asked this a lot probably, but do you have a favorite answer that somebody gave you onto why, when you were talking about people, of why you love baseball? Do you have a favorite answer that somebody gave you?
Ooh, I do. I have a couple of favorite answers. One of my favorite answers ends the book. There's sort of a very unusual chapter that ends the book, which I'm happy to give away. It involves a young woman named Iris Skinner, who people might remember as Ichiro Girl. She went viral on YouTube for Ichiro smashing into her on a foul ball and her losing her mind and with joy that she was so close to Ichiro and all that. She was so cool. And she's got to be in her mid-20s now. She's not much older than my oldest daughter. And she's like a sort of baseball fan, as most people are. Loves going to the games, that probably doesn't keep up with the standing. Probably is really excited now that the Mariners are playing good baseball. It's cool, but not, a huge fan. But big enough fan to know that Ichiro is her hero and all of those sorts of things. And she talked without really even me asking about why she loves baseball. And it was so sweet and so cool. And to me, it was like the kind of the essence of it. And so I ended the book with her and that story. And I love that so much. And to me, so it's like, when I asked Bob Costas why I love baseball, and Bob gave me, a catalog of 10 things that baseball does better than anything else. And that's wonderful too, but it's different So I love that I got, you know, people who would say, oh, I love baseball because of triples, or I love baseball because of, you know, pitching duels, or I love baseball because, you know, of some of the things in the book. And then others who are like, I love baseball because it connects me to my family. And then others who said, I love baseball because it's, you know, it's the one thing that takes me away from everything. And, you know, it's really, really cool, the wide scope of things that people said about that.
So I can tell you, I'm not the world's biggest baseball fan. Growing up in Buffalo, you know, it's really much the fourth sport behind college basketball, hockey, and football. But
Sure,
why I love baseball would have to be Exhibition Stadium in Toronto, because that's where I
sure.
first went to a game. My first game was actually Yaz's last weekend, or Yaz's last year. The Blue Jays played the Red Sox, and of course the Blue Jays had that awesome outfield, George Bell, Lloyd Mosby, and Jesse Barfield. But
Yes.
that place was such a dump, but it's what I think of when I think of baseball. You know, you it imprints on you there. But what a terrible ballpark! But that is the memory, man. That is it.
Oh, absolutely. My favorite, I mean, one of the very, very dearest memories of, for me is growing up going to Cleveland Municipal Stadium, which you can't be a bigger dump than that one.
Right?
You know, me and 67 of my closest friends in a, you know, 78,000 seat stadium.
All
And we
behind poles.
all behind poles, every single person behind a steel girder, blocking all views, guy in the outfield banging on the drums like he's the only sound you hear because there's hardly anybody there. The, you know, the infield is, you know, looks like several dead horses were buried there. And it's, you know, but I love it so much. One of my favorite like little sort of bits of karma with this book was, I wrote about barehanded plays, and one of the plays that I wrote about was the great Ozzie Smith play where, you know, he's diving to his left, ball kicks to his right, he grabs it out of midair and comes, you know, bounces to his feet and throws out the runner. And I was talking to Dale Murphy about something entirely different, and Dale Murphy said, you know, I was at that game. Um, he was young. It was like his first full year. It's like, I was at that game. I saw that play, and he starts talking about that play, and I was talking about something completely different, and it ended up he ended up being the whole chapter, because what he talked about was something I had not thought about in forever, which is plays like that'll never happen again because infields will never be that bad again.
Right.
Like the
That was a
infield
great
in
story in the book. That was so
yeah,
great.
the infield in Atlanta was so horrible. I mean, it was so bad that like Steve Garvey refused to take like infield practice there. It was so bad. It was so filled with rocks and holes and this and there were a bunch of, you know, fields like that, including Exhibition and including you know, Shea and San Francisco, and they were terrible. And that led to, you know, nobody wants to go back to those days, but it led to the Ozzie Smith play that, you know, that we'll never get. We'll get bad hops is like a ball like going 1 inch higher than you thought it was going to go before on these beautifully manicured infields now. And so, yeah, so fun stuff like that happened throughout writing this book.
And after reading that chapter, I went down an Ozzie Smith rabbit hole on YouTube. And aside from the diving, man, and you point this out in the book, but I really noticed it after reading that, like how quickly he would bump up.
Unbelievable.
After that was that's the magic of that.
He like, it was like a trampoline. Like like it doesn't even make sense the way he would dive for a ball and then bounce to his feet. I mean, he was, you know, he was a gymnast. I mean, like not only literally a gymnast, but I mean, that's what he was on the field. There's never been anybody so springy, you know.
Yeah.
He just somehow he wouldn't scramble to his feet. He would literally bounce up to his feet. And yeah, and Ozzie Smith, there are worse things. One of my favorite things about this book, in my imagination, is that this book will send people into a YouTube like stupor, because there's so many cool things in the book that you'll be like, hey, I want to see this immediately. You know, I don't know how you can read the Kevin Mitchell barehanded catch chapter without like, hey, I want to see that play, right? And so you've got all of that, which is super duper fun. But then, like you said, it leads you down a whole other, like, you watch that one Ozzie Smith play, which is very grainy. It's not the best video. And you're like, oh, I want to see some Ozzie Smith plays, and YouTube does not disappoint.
No. And what's great about that Ozzie Smith play, it's kind of like the Bo Jackson play, which you've wrote about, and Jeff Perlman and I have talked about on here too. Like the Bo Jackson play, you famously say you never see Bo throw the ball. Like he just cuts and he's in midair. And the Ozzie, the barehanded Ozzie play, like it's from the 70s. So there's one replay, and it's like the behind the plate, you kind of get him as he's coming. There's no like 4-camera like breaking it down. You get like half a glimpse of it, and that's it.
Yeah, you sort of get like the one thing that I loved about like 1970s and 80s baseball and videos that you look back now, and Bo is the best example. Those guys were really cut happy. Like it's like, hey, we've got 4 cameras, let's use them all, you know. So you got the ball going, and you got Ozzie making the play, and then suddenly we're cut to another camera where Ozzie's throwing. It's like just one camera, just follow him, you know. And with Bo, it's really frustrating because you know somewhere at some point there was a camera shot of him throwing the ball because that camera had to stay on him, and they cut away, and then they never ever have found that again. And but it makes that stuff legendary. You know, that was I mentioned Bob Costas when I first started writing the book. I was talking to him, and he talked about legendary and how misused that word is. And his point was, he's like, look, Michael Jordan, in his view, is the greatest player who ever lived, but he's not legendary because we saw everything he did. There was nothing he did that was like behind it. Like Satchel Paige is legendary, right? And stories and legends. There are no legends about Michael Jordan. Like you would say, well, wasn't it legendary when he, you know, had the flu and won the game? It's like, yeah, but we know it happened. We watched it. We watched it from beginning to end. So it's a little bit different.
So the writing of this, I'm curious, because you have all the essays, the 108-ish, and they're all kind of they're structured differently. It's not like one kind of like format, like very much so. So I'm curious about the writing process of this. Like, how did you set out to write all, you know, I know you're incredibly prolific, especially with baseball, but how did you think about the writing of each essay? And so it wasn't just the same thing over and over again for a whole book.
What I honestly did in my mind was each essay was its own thing, right?
Okay.
It was its brand new concept. So it was like, hey, if I'm writing the essay of Jackie Mitchell striking out Babe Ruth, then you know that was I wrote almost like a screenplay, right? Like I introduced the characters, and you know, because there were so many super fun characters in that one. And then if I was writing about the Ozzie Smith play, you know, I told that through the eyes of Dale Murphy and Ozzie. And others were just completely different. So it just sort of with each essay, I wanted it to feel like its own thing. And some of the essays are certainly similar in the way I wrote them, and some are personal, but all of them, I think I really learned this from the Baseball 100. I did not want any of the Baseball 100 essays to feel dialed in somehow, right? I wanted each one to feel like special. If I wrote if this was the entire book, was this one essay, it would hold, it would stand. It'd be like, okay, I get it. You know, I get why you did this on Carlton Fisk or why you did this on Sandy Koufax. So I brought that with me, but I think I kind of bring that to all of my writing. I mean, the one thing about being prolific, which is thank you for saying that. It's a cool thing because I am, you know, I love doing it. Like I don't ever write to just write, you know, everything that I write has sort of its own purpose.
So you mentioned you're working on the football book. The Football 100 is the next one, and that's going to be book number 8, right?
It's gonna be book number 8. It's not gonna be the Football 100 though.
Oh, okay.
It
Oh,
is. I can share with you. Yeah, it's going to be. I've got this one tentatively titled. It's not right now in my mind. It's Why We Love and Hate Football. It's sort
ooh.
of, so yeah. And it follows, at least at this moment, it follows sort of a similar track. I did write a Football 100 for my newsletter, as you mentioned, and I could have just that was what was purchased. I mean, I could have just used that, but I love this so much. And I think in some ways football is the perfect, because football is also about moments, but it's about dramatic, big, huge moments and the emotions that they bring in us, and how much we, how every great moment essentially in football is both the greatest moment and the worst moment, in everybody, in somebody's life. And so I really, really wanted to capture that. And it's a lot of fun, but I mean, it is very different from baseball.
So what did you take from I guess two-part question. A, what do you like about that the structure of the baseball book, this book that's bringing you to football? And since this is book number 8, kind of what lessons have you learned from the first 7 that you're applying to this one?
The structure is it's, I would only say it's a loosely sort of followed structure, but I liked, there were innovations, in at least in my mind, that I did with this book, including sort of these compilation chapters in between these moments. I really, really liked. And when I was sitting there going through each player, I was like, in a lot of ways, I'd rather tell the story of this player through a moment, and I would rather do it, through, and I would love to, like, I in my mind can think of just, 5 great catches, 5 great, like things like that that are just very, very, that fit football's sort of the whole essence of football. Um the lessons are tough because each book I think feels very, very different. I mean, this book and the Baseball 100 seem to have sort of a natural connection, but they were very, very different writing them. And of course, the Baseball 100 I wrote as a daily thing, so they were very different. The football one and the baseball one seem to have a natural connection, but they're very different. The writing is very different, and obviously Houdini was incredibly different. Paterno was different, and Buck O'Neill was different. So, I mean, I'm sure there are lessons. I mean, there are things about discipline and things about sitting at your computer and making sure you get a fair amount done, and not wasting days. And I mean, there are things about the writing discipline that certainly I've learned many, many lessons along the lines. But the writing itself feels fresh and new each time. It just feels like it's just a different challenge.
What are some of those discipline lessons that you've learned over the years?
I'm not a word counter like some people are. Some people, like, I got to get 1,000 words written today or whatever. I'm not a word counter, but I am a, was this a good day or not a good day person. Like, at the end of the day, I'm like, all right, writing a book, you can spend, especially books like these that are so research driven, you can spend hours and hours and hours and hours and not get anything on the page. And it's not like you're not working, and it's not like you're not being productive, but you got to get it on the page. And especially a book like this, the football book, where I'm very much on a deadline. I mean, we want this book to come out next year. And so I'm very much on a deadline. I think that I've learned the discipline of, like, at the end of the day, saying, okay, yeah, it's great that you got all this work done, but you got to get stuff on the page. The other thing that I've really sort of learned from a discipline standpoint is I've learned about myself as a writer, and what I love doing is rewriting. That's my favorite thing. So I learned, and this was hard for me because I'm not a banger. Like, there are people that are bangers that can just type, 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 boom, 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 and then go back later and fix it. Like, I kind of want to fix it while I'm working. But yet at the same time, what I really like doing is rewriting. So I've learned and taught myself to sort of be more of a banger and get more down on paper that's not perfect, or on the computer screen. It's not perfect, but I'll go back because I think that my going back is my favorite part of doing the writing. So I will now sort of give myself a break and just go, yeah, okay, look, I don't love this paragraph. I don't like this section. I don't love this chapter sometimes. but I'll fix it. I'll go back later and I'll rework it and maybe completely rewrite it, but it'll be easier for me to do that with stuff on the page already.
That's interesting, because reading your work for so long, it never feels like it's like I would have guessed you were much more kind of not banger, but much more just kind of let it go, let it flow guy than the reworking. That's a credit to your writing and credit to your rewriting that it comes off that way, I think.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think as a book person, I am. Of course, as a newsletter writer, and even a magazine writer, I'm very much a first draft guy with a few fixes later, just because of time or whatever. But for a book, I'll sit in a chapter and I'll think, this is a 4,000 word chapter, and I want to completely rework it. That'll still only take me a few hours, because when I have the words on the page, it just really pushes me to think about exactly what I want it to look like. And a lot of times I'll go into a chapter and think, yeah, this really needs to be rewritten. And then I'll start rewriting and I'm like, you know what? It was better the first time. I just need to, sometimes you also need to leave stuff alone.
So we'll get you out of here on the question that I end all the podcasts with. What's the best thing you've read lately?
Okay. Well, you know what? I don't want to call it the best thing I've read lately, because I'm still in the middle of it, and I'm not, and I have mixed feelings about it. But the most surprisingly interesting thing I've read, I'll give you that. Andrew McCarthy wrote a book.
Really?
Yeah, Andrew McCarthy, the actor, wrote a book where he went and walked. I guess there's a very famous sort of religious walk in Spain that you can make. And he walked it when he was young and kind of going through many, many hard things. He did it. And now he goes back and walks it with his son. And it's sort of a daily diary of walking this 500-mile Spanish terrain with sort of his not entirely convinced son. And it's very funny and really thoughtful. He's a very good writer. Andrew McCarthy's a very good writer. And it just seemed like the very last book that I'd read, just not for any other reason, that it just not a celebrity, reader or anything like that. But it was recommended to me by somebody who I really like, and it's really good. It's really, really fun. And I think it's something called Something with Sam. I think his son's name is Sam for sure. And I think it's Walks with Sam or Walking with Sam or something like that, by Andrew McCarthy. And I know that was not what you were expecting. But then that was not what I was expecting either. It's actually really, really fun.
Cool. Well, I'll have a link to that in the show notes. I'll have a link to all the places to buy Why We Love Baseball in the show notes as well. Joe, as always, this has been a blast, and looking forward to the next one.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to The Other 51. Thanks to Joe Posnanski for joining me, and special thanks to Jamie Knapp for helping set everything up. You can get show notes for this episode and all of our episodes wherever you get podcasts or at our home at sportsmediaguy.com. Thanks for listening. Give us a rating, review us, and our theme music, as always, is by Ellie Moritz.